a prison that's been under close scrutiny since Richard Matt and David Sweat broke out in early June. A former sergeant at Clinton Correctional is speaking out tonight with new details from inside the prison walls, how he says heroin is making its way into the hands of inmates. CBS 6's Ann McCloy with more now on the political battle that's been fueled by the prison break.
There would be a huge public outcry if the public ever found out how their tax dollars were being used.
Jeff Dumas worked at Clinton Correctional Facility in DANNEMORA for 22 of his 25 years in corrections. He'd risen through the ranks, becoming a sergeant, and retired from the prison just 8 months before convicts Richard Matt and David Sweat escaped.
I think it could happen again just because it's happened in the past and the state isn't proactive, they're reactive.
The New York State Department of Corrections and Community Supervision eliminated Honor Block A, the block Matt and Sweat were on, pending further review 3 weeks after the prison break, and said all inmates would be subject to the same security restrictions. But Dumas says he's just learned some inmates on Block B who work in the prison mess hall are still getting the very same honor privileges Matt and Sweat had. For instance, he says those prisoners can watch TV and roam the galleries, meaning the hallway in front of a cell. He says inmates can work out, cook, and have phone privileges.
The state just refuses to treat inmates like inmates. They coddle these guys unbelievable.
Dumas says for years, prison workers have been asking for changes to the state's prison visitation policy. He says heroin gets into the prison through the prison visiting rooms.
My 25 years, it's been the same thing, and we catch drugs constantly. Every week, a few times a week, we are getting drugs off of inmates, especially in the maxes. The state knows about it. The state does not want to do anything about it.
Dumas says there isn't a heroin ring in the prison as had been reported in the media, but he says prisoners are frequently able to get their hands on it despite security measures. Dumas says the drugs are transferred when inmates hug and kiss their relatives.
As soon as she kisses him, she just passes the balloon to the inmate. He swallows it and regurgitates it back in his cell in a couple hours.
Before the prison break, Dumas says there was even an honor visiting room for prisoners with honor block privileges, where prisoners and family have even more freedom to touch. Dumas says he's learned this room is now used for general population. In either room, he says there can be more than 40 people at a time, with only 2 corrections officers watching over. One of the unions that represents state prison workers says staffing continues to be an issue.
You want to have it staffed adequately so you can minimize, what occurs in there.
Dumas says special interest groups that go to bat for prisoners are preventing tougher policies at state prisons.
Physical contact, maintaining family ties is absolutely critical to successful reintegration in the community. And 98% of the people that go to prison come home.
Karen Murtaugh is the executive director of Prisoners Legal Services, a state-funded group that advocates for inmates. She says getting rid of incentive programs, including the prison honor block, is a horrible idea.
What do I think will happen if they get rid of honor block? I think tensions will rise. I think there will be more problems in the prison with respect to safety, and I think it will affect our recidivism rate.
Already, Murtaugh says she's receiving mail from inmates at Clinton explaining why the honor block should come back. This letter says, in part, it took me 15 months to earn my way onto the honor block. The elimination of the honor block was not well thought out. The honor block was misportrayed in the media as a place that inmates were allowed to do whatever they wanted. The inmate says that just doesn't happen.
We can't have an across-the-board line that says if you commit this crime, you will never have anything. You'll never have an incentive. We'll just lock you away, because that's not how we think as a society. We believe in, the humanity of people.
Dumas maintains there is a need for reform and transparency at all state prisons. Docs declined our request for an interview and declined to answer our questions regarding prison policy and Dumas's claims, citing the ongoing investigation at the prison.
CBS 6 has filed a Freedom of Information Act request with all of our questions. We also reached out to Governor Andrew Cuomo's office for comment on this story. The governor's office referred us to docs, where officials again declined our request. In Albany, Ann McCloy, CBS 6 News.
CBS 6 has reached out to neighboring states to gather information on inmate privileges, but so far hasn't heard back. We did learn, though, that there are similar practices used in states further away.